Welcome to Chess Meal. Today I'm going to talk about the French exchange. It starts out after e4, e6, d4, d5, take. This reputation is very controversial because a lot of people think it might be boring and other people think, oh, it makes my life easy because it's simple and it's no weird structures. Well, in fact, I'm going to prove that that's kind of only half the truth. On the other hand, black has a lot of interesting ways to imbalance the structure in such a way that white cannot really play for an easy draw. So after take, I'm going to touch on two main moves, knight f3 and bishop d3. More popular, but it's actually worse than knight f3. And we'll talk about that in a second. The idea of bishop d3 is to play knight e2. Point is that after bishop g4, he can block after he castles with f3. After knight f3, black can later, maybe not now, but later pin the knight. Not now because of h3 and white is doing great. But bishop d3, not a good move. What would you play for black here? The best move is c5, aimed against playing knight d2. After knight e2, can you spot how to win? Yeah, c4, trapping the bishop. So this c5 move forces white to exit, so to speak, autopilot mode, because knight e2 is now stupid. Here white can play c3, take, queen e2 maybe, or excuse me, yeah, queen e2 is a line, or knight f3. Other moves include, well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I've seen b3, but it's not so serious. So, in knight f3 line, c5 is not a good idea because the bishop hasn't moved yet, but now he can move to bishop b5. If the bishop were on d3, then c5 is a good idea because we're aiming to play c4. In fact, c4 is a good move even if you don't trap the bishop. And we'll see lines like that in a second. But first, here, this is bad for black because of bishop b5, knight c6, castle, bishop d6, and c4. Critical move. Black has some troubles here, and the assessment is pretty clear. In fact, if we flip the board and put it on white's perspective, this is an actual line that white can try, but it's not so good because of bishop b4. So essentially what happened is white got the same position a tempo up. As you can imagine, this is not so good for when black tries it, for black. So c5 not so good. Instead, we wait with knight f6. You have other options. You can play knight c6 and attempt to castle the queen side. You can put bishop d6, knight ge7, bishop f5, maybe queen d7, castle queenside. Or you can also castle kingside in this same schematic. So take knight f3. So let's talk about knight f6. After this, you might see bishop d3. Now is a good time to play c5. What is our idea? We want to put pawn on c4 so that we can put a bishop on d6 next. The point of putting the pawn on c4 is that white can no longer capture, and because of that, we can keep our bishop on d6, and we have very strong scope aimed against the king side. So, after c5, castle c4, great move. You can expect rook e1 with idea putting bishop on f1 instead of e2 where it's kind of cramped. Bishop e7, bishop f1, castle b3. This structure is very interesting. White has this pawn here, but this is actually pretty good for black because in the future, black gets to put a rook on the c-file and aim against playing against this weak pawn. Anytime white ever plays c4, that's actually also weakening. Black gets excellent counter chances after just the fact that the knight's on c6 aimed against the d4 pawn. So this is fine for black. In fact, it's excellent. And now, these are just sample moves, mini moves were possible. Rook c8. Black has an excellent game, again, aimed against playing against this c3 pawn. So instead of bishop d3, strong players choose bishop g5. And now we have to play kind of precise. We have to play quiet and precise. So bishop e7 here, I recommend bishop d3, castle, castle. At first glance, it looks like white has better activity. He has 3 pieces developed. In addition, he has bishop on d3 versus bishop on e7. Believe it or not, this bishop on g5, the fact that it's there means that black can seize somewhat of the initiative in this position. Why? Because we can harass it and later play knight e4. So first bishop g4, knight bd2, knight bd7, c3, and now c5. After taking on c5, well, we have an isolated pawn, but our life is very easy because we have all our pieces on there's safety squares. There's no tactics for white. This position is slightly better for black. Instead of taking on c5, white should play rook e1, after which he's got a fine position. Again, you could just play h6, and after bishop h4, there might be g5, bishop g3, and now even knight e4, because you're going to play f5 and f4. I don't think knight takes has any merit, because the bishop stands really well on e7. For example, you can just play knight e4, or even knight h7 or bishop g4. I think all moves work here, and black has no problems. So instead, let's look at bishop d3 line because it is more popular and quite threatening. So bishop d3, so c5, like we said before. Let's talk about taking on c5 first. We have isolated pawn, but it's a good version. Knight f3, knight f6, castle, castle, bishop g5. Now this time we can play knight c6, and after knight bd2, we play... The idea of knight bd2 is stop this idea with h6, g5, knight e4. We cannot play it because the knight's on d2. See, after take, 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 you might think at first glance, oh, I can play f5, attacking the bishop, but also threatening to trap it next move. But nope, there's this important in-betweener move, bishop d5. Yep, it's just great for white. For this reason, black should play a waiting move, bishop b6. And the point is, black is waiting for white to play knight b3. After he plays a move like knight b3, you can play h6. And then the same idea. And now the knight is strongly standing on e4. This whole line for black with this bishop b6 is a very crafty idea, because knight bd2, knight b3, you know, it's a very typical plan. But it does not really work here because of black's counterplay on the king side. So let's say knight b3, h6, same idea, right? Okay. What does white do? If c3, then we play f5, and black is almost winning, strategically winning. If he takes, then we take, and again, black is standing way better. f5, f4 is coming again. Queen trade is not an issue for black. The knight has to move on f3 to d2, for example. It's horrible. The best idea is c4, aimed against this f5 push. f5 is now risky because things open up on the light squares. So instead of f5, black should play knight takes g3, hg3, and take. The point is queen f6. No need to trade queens in this circumstance. This bishop is standing really well. Black has bishop pair. And yeah, black's doing great in this open position with the bishop pair. The similar scenario happens after c3. We play h6, bishop h4, rook e8, a waiting move. Knight b3. Yeah, we play rook e8 because we want to wait until this knight moves to b3 so that we can play g5, knight e4. So knight b3, g5, and knight e4. Knight d4 and f5. This time, white is in more trouble. White's even in more trouble. After h3, which is basically the only move, trying to avoid the trap. Well, the bishop is really bad. Caged in, and because of that, we can play in the center very strongly and create threats on kingside due to white's poor piece coordination. So queen f6, best move here. Already this d4 point is targeted enough that black has an almost winning position. It's really hard to deal with the pressure on d4 with everything else in put into account. So this line is great for black. Knight c3 is probably the best idea, but after bishop e6, black stands great. One move, final move, is c3. We can try the same idea with knight e4. And now the point is, white wants to play c4 without committing their knight. He wants to bring the knight to c3 later. We take, and take. After take, bishop takes f2. Key move. If we go back, try to figure out why bishop takes f2 is so great. It's so great because after king takes f2, there's queen takes queen b6. If rook f2, that's not possible. We hang the queen, so instead, king takes. And now queen b6, king e1, rook e8, bishop e2, and queen takes b2. By the way, it's very important that black plays all these moves. Every precise move is crucial. After knight b2, saving the rook on a1, we can play bishop f5, and white's position is full of unpleasant threats, such as knight b4 for knight c2 or knight d3. Yeah, it's just a disaster. So if queen c1, for example, we can play queen b5, attacking e2, since the queen, when it moves to c1, it removes the defense of e2. Queen c4, and can you spot it? Queen takes, and now bishop d3. White is in shambles. We are 2 pawns up. We're going to win the piece back, and it's over. That's why delaying the knight move doesn't work. So after c3, we can play h6, g5, knight e4, and expect knight b2. Well, again, you play f5, and we transpose. These are all the most important ideas that exist in d takes c5 line. Now we have to look at knight f3 line. After knight f3, play c4. Bishop e2 is forced, and now we have, well, 2 ideas. I mean, bishop d6. Maybe it's also possible to go knight f6 first. The point is after b3, take, knight e7, a nice flexible choice. Well, we get the same scenario where we are going to play against the c file, the c pawn, and bring our bishop to f5 too, and get great counterplay. So castle, castle, and now if c4, then knight c6 offers black excellent play positionally. Bishop g5, well, you can play the same, knight bc6, knight bd2, a6, rook e1. These are sample moves. The idea of rook e1 is to play on the e file. That's also the point of bishop g5, is to create problems on the e file. Here, I mean, after bishop f5, the truth is we have no problems. We move rook to c8, since the pawn's on a6 so nicely solid. And we can move our queen away or push f6 and have a great position. Play against the pawn whether it goes to c3 or c2. This is great for black. Okay. So that's what happens after knight f3. And here. Other moves. Queen e2, it exists. We should block bishop e7. Why not queen e7? Well, the reason is because we get isolated pawn after take, take, and take. With isolated pawn, you would much rather have your queens available. Therefore, you should block with bishop e7. Even though he can take, right? This is okay. Knight f6. And black is going to castle and play rook e8 and then take. And because the queen is standing on a risky file, he has to move later. Other lines? Well, there exists c3. Again, we play our favorite c4 after, or do we? Well, c4, there's bishop c2. It looks pretty solid for white. We should not play c4 just yet. Instead, we can try for, after c3, we can try knight f6, waiting. And the point is to play with our pieces. So after a move like knight f3, we can actually afford to play bishop d6 because even though, we move the bishop twice, this is actually good for black. White actually has nothing here. For example, castle, bishop d5, knight c6, and now bishop e2 is interesting. Idea is to threaten winning a pawn on d5. White is slightly worse already, but it's important to ask yourself, how are you going to handle the pawn on d5? You could try to defend with bishop e6, but the problem is, so knight bd2, h6 plan does not work the same, because after knight d4, there is knight b3, okay, bishop b6. And the point is after the knight gets to d4, the bishop on e6 is threatened. Therefore, we cannot play f5. And this is a problem. Essentially, by playing bishop to e6, we improve black's plan of playing knight bd2, knight b3, and knight d4. That's why we don't play bishop e6. In fact, there's another reason to not playing bishop e6. Bishop might want to go somewhere else, right? Or maybe worth noting that, well, with such a direct way of defending the pawn, black's position stays kind of fixed for a while. So you want something else. So rook e8 is actually the best. We are playing against the e2 bishop. White has to be very careful. Here's another trap. Rook e1 looks very natural, but we can punish it. How do we punish? What do you think? Yes, bishop takes f2, of course, because after king takes, we have knight e4 picking up the bishop on g5. Yep, it's danger. Over. So, instead of rook e1, white could try bishop h4, intending maybe bishop g3, and more importantly, he wants to play rook e1 while he guards the pawn on f2 with his bishop. So here, we can play h6, okay, rook e1, g5, bishop g3, knight e4, and we get an excellent position. Just play f5, f4, but do not play f5 when they play c4. When they play c4, you have to change a bit. Against c4 here, you could try maybe, let's see, d4 looks possible at first glance. Maybe that's something to look at. Probably d4, and then next is f5. Because we already have great control of the e file. I mean, if bishop d3, yes, we blockade the d4 pawn with our bishop, which is nice. But maybe we can, let's see, play f5 first. And now we can basically wait and then play knight b4 unless white plays a3, then in which case it looks pretty unclear. Another possibility after this c4 move is probably just to take, and then again d4, or alternatively just take. Maybe taking's okay for black. One final line that I would like to talk about is deviant of the c-file c-pawn attacking lines. That is the move back to knight of 3. As a matter of fact, there exists a very symmetrical variation with bishop d6. Again, not really necessary. After bishop d3, you really should play c5. You're almost guaranteed a better position by that point. So, but bishop d6 is also interesting because after castle, castle, we can play symmetrical. But, okay, so this is not the moment yet. The moment is after unusual but playable move, knight c3. Black has a very interesting idea, and very symmetrical, knight c6. The point is that grabbing this d5 pawn looks very tempting, and there are two ways to try to grab it. You can grab it immediately, or you can just take and then grab. But both of these do not yield a desirable outcome. If he takes right away, we have this discovery of bishop takes, after which king takes. We can decide between playing queen d6 followed by queen d5, or we can play queen d5 immediately. Queen d6 to deliver check. But yeah, after queen d5, black is doing okay. He has a lot of pressure already, threatening to take here, and the king is a bit exposed. So, if he takes bishop f6 first, this may even be worse. Because after take, how do you suppose black plays? Well, queen h6. After queen h6, black's position is practically winning, as a matter of fact. Believe it or not. So our threat is to take on f3, which threatens h2. So white has to try something like h3, after which we have a nice move. Well, first we can play knight takes d4, strong move, after which you cannot take because of this. So instead, white tries bishop e2, after which we can take anyway. And after we take, we have this nice sacrifice, very normal, typical sacrifice. Yeah, there's no way to stop the checkmate because the bishop on f3 blocks the f-pawn. If the bishop were on e2, then maybe white can try to survive, although it still looks really nasty because of bishop c5, I guess. But yeah, especially that the bishop's on f3, this means that white is getting mated very shortly. White tried rook e1, but after rook e1 you can retreat, threaten queen h2 and rook e8. But after g3, what do you think? Well, first rook pins the queen, and what this does is threaten bishop takes g3. After queen e2, there's bishop takes and bishop takes. You cannot take yet because I'm not sure. Maybe this also works. Because this yields the same outcome. The point is, after this trade, there exists rook d2. After rook d2, black's game is practically won. After queen f3, yeah, you get mated in two. Can you spot it? Queen h2 and rook f2. Checkmate after the exchange. Well, that sums up a lot about the French exchange. Very interesting ways to try to gain an early advantage for black. And this c5 line is good against bishop d3, but bad against knight f3. In the bishop d3 line, c5 leads to a position that is almost already an advantage for black. And even if it's not an advantage, it at least imbalances the position and the pawn structure to something very unique. I totally recommend this video to anybody who plays French, French defense and struggles with the exchange because, I have to play symmetrical and it's just gonna be a boring draw. No, you can try c5 and get very interesting results and a very nice game. So go ahead, try it out, and see what you think. I swear, it will make your life a lot easier. Thank you for watching in, and see you later.